G'day. Today you are listening to CJ Today Reads Today. So I'm going to be reading you a story, and I'm really unorganized, but what I want to read today is a story I came across in a magazine, and it's from the Darwin Awards. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the Darwin Awards, this was started in about the 1990s, maybe even earlier, but I think I remember it certainly from the 1990s. Yes, I am that old. And it was basically people who did things that were so stupid that they died and therefore took their genes out of the gene pool by doing so. So it was a lot of lots of great stories in the 90s. This story that I'm about to read comes from there, and it's just so ridiculous, but it gave me an idea that I could read Darwin Awards to you, but yeah, you can pretty much go and find them for yourselves, and I'm worried about copyright, so I wasn't quite sure to do this. So I'm going to read this first one, but then it got me thinking about, well, what about Aussie stories? Because there's some pretty silly Aussie stories out there as well. So the story that I came across was about a Polish farmer called Krzysztof Azninski, and I'm going to pronounce it Krzysztof Azninski. Hopefully that sounded a bit more Polish. If you're Polish and you heard that and you went, oh my God, don't do that again. I'm going to do it again. Krzysztof Azninski, and this is his story. So Azninski, 30, had been drinking with friends when it was suggested that they strip naked, play some, in inverted commas, men's games. This is not suspicious at all. Initially, they hit each other over the head with frozen turnips. Okay. But then one man took it to the next level by cutting off the end of his foot with a chainsaw. To one-up his comrade, Azninski grabbed the saw and shouting, "Watch this then," probably said, "Watch this then," like he swung at his own head and chopped it off. "It's funny," said one companion. "When he was young, he put on his sister's underwear, but he died like a man." That comment is just, that's what made me laugh. It's just completely random because I don't know what that has anything to do with the story. But anyway, so that's where we started. I'm just going to pause for a moment so that I can jump forward to where my notes say what we're going to do next. So just like listen to Girl from Ipanema. So we're going to have just a short interlude. You carry on while I do this. And we're back. So, looking at some Aussie stories, I wanted to see, did we have some stupid stories? And of course, every country does. But Australians love a practical joke, and they're really good at it, I've got to say. And the people, like guys in particular, from a cultural reference, is a larrikin. A larrikin is somebody who's a bit of a jokester, but it's all good natured. It's not cruel or anything like that. So I thought, well, maybe we've got some stories in our history of larrikins and the sort of things that they got up to, or just some interesting stories. So the first one I came across was a story about the magpie that brought down Ben Hall. So Ben Hall was a bushranger. Bushranger is the equivalent of like an outlaw from the US. So if you're thinking like Billy the Kid, you'll be thinking of, and Doc Holliday, I think, was the other one. And there's lots of others in US culture in that sort of same time period. In Australia, we had bushrangers, so outlaws, basically. And the most famous being Ned Kelly, mainly because Ned Kelly was famous because he kept beating the police that would be trying to catch him. He was very good at eluding them, him and his brothers. So they were the Ned Kelly gang. So these people would be stealing sheep and robbing places and weren't afraid to kill somebody as well, or unalive them. Maybe I should just say unalive them. So that's who Ben Hall was. He was a famous bushranger. So I'm going to start the story with the magpie that brought down Ben Hall. Now, your next question is, what's a magpie? So if you Google magpie swooping, you'll get an idea about what this story is going to be about. So magpies, during their breeding season, they are very, very territorial. They're large black and white birds, not quite as big as a cockatoo, but they're still impressively. They're not tiny. They're not little birds. And they normally they'll leave you alone. They don't have any problems. But when they're nesting, they like to protect what's happening, and they will swoop anything that comes near them, including people. So you can see that to stop this, in the 1970s, you just pretty much tied an ice cream container to your head and walked to school so that if you were swooped, it would hit the container and not your head. You'll see images, modern images of people wearing bicycle helmets with straws sticking out of them or cable ties, all in an effort to deter being actually attacked by a magpie. It is a thing. I'm not making this up. It is a thing. You can Google it and have a look. And I fully expect Kelly to provide more information about this in the comments. And I really appreciate you, Kelly. So yeah. And you don't have to, of course, but I expect that you will. So they say Bushranger Ben Hall was one of the slickest outlaws in Australian history. Horse like the wind, eyes like an eagle, and luck enough to make a cat jealous. But every legend has its downfall. And according to one bush yarn, that's another name for a story, it wasn't bullets, bounty hunters, or betrayal that brought down Ben Hall. It was a magpie. Yep, magpie. Picture it. The year is 1865, and Hall's galloping flat chat through the bush. Troopers hot on his tail. Troopers were the police, mounted police in particular, which sounds more suspicious or weird than it is, but it just means they were on horseback. So troopers hot on his tail, mustaches bristling and flapping in the winds because it's the 1860s and they did that. Lots of old photos will show you the impressive moustaches that people were wearing, growing, cutting, shaping. Anyway, he's nearly out of reach, laughing that cheeky outlaw laugh, which I'm not sure what that is, but you can probably guess, whoa, that kind of laugh, and then swoop. Out of out of nowhere comes this black and white missile with wings, a magpie in full nesting mode, targeting Hall's head like it's a Bunnings hat. Sorry, minor interruption there because somebody came into the room where I'm recording. Where did I get up to? Bunnings hat. So yes, targeting Hall's head like he's wearing a Bunnings hat. So I'm going to do a little side story here. So Bunnings, Bunnings, is a huge hardware store chain, love Bunnings, that operates around Australia. Every Saturday they have a local charity or like a school group or someone trying to raise money will run a sausage sizzle, and it is the best, quite honestly. What is a sausage sizzle, I hear you say, for those non-Aussies amongst you? A sausage sizzle is basically where you cook sausages, onions, and you go up to them and say, I would like a sausage sandwich, please. They give you one slice of bread. It's normally buttered, but sometimes not, with one sausage diagonally, corner to corner in it. Then you put onions on top and tomato sauce, tomato sauce is tomato sauce, but and like in Cockney slang, it would be called dead horse, but tomato sauce, like a ketchup. And you can have mustard as well, but most of the time that's all you have. They are awesome. Don't get a plate to eat this, or it's not wrapped up. It's just given to you with a serviette or a napkin, if you're American, napkin. A serviette holding it, and you eat these, and it costs like $2, and you're supporting the local school or the local Rotary Club or whatever it is. So they do this every Saturday at Bunnings. So it's become a bit of an institution to go and get your Bunnings snag, which is another name for a sausage, at their sausage sizzle that they have. So the fact that Ben Hall in this story is wearing a Bunnings hat is that one of the free things that they gave away at some point was you could have a hat which was not like a cap, not a baseball cap, but it was like a bucket hat. So it had, but wider brim. So just to protect you from the sun. So yes, that's just adding a little bit of Aussie context into this story. So this magpie is in nesting mode and targeting Hall's head like it's wearing a Bunnings hat. So like the hat itself is large, so maybe that's why it wants to attack it. The horse panics, does a pirouette no ballerina could match, and throws Ben Hall into a muddy creek like a sack of disgraced potatoes. I don't know what a disgraced potato looks like. I don't know that I've seen a potato frown but it'd be really easy to turn the frown upside down because you would just like turn the potato around, wouldn't you? So he's in the creek. So there he is, soaked, cranky, trying to fish a leech out of his boot with a matchstick. See, when you get leeches stuck to you, the best way to get rid of them is either salt, put some salt on them, they don't like that, or heat. So you light a match, get it close to them, and they'll fall off. And then you don't have to try and pull them off. So that's what he was trying to do. But the matchstick he was using was a stick of dynamite. This is probably a no-no, and no, it's not going in the direction that you thought it would. Now, we don't know if that part's true. We don't know if it was a stick of dynamite, but that's the embellishment of the story that's happened over the intervening century or so. So it made the troopers cautious, though, when they arrested him. One even poked him with a rake to be safe. I don't think that's part of the story is true, because I don't think that troopers were riding around in the bush with rakes. I think they maybe had rifles, but not rakes. Later, when asked what finally brought him down, Hall allegedly muttered, "If it weren't for that feathered devil, I'd still be free." History doesn't record what happened to the magpie, but I like to think that she went on to torment every outlaw who ever dared to ride beneath her gum tree. And that, mates, is how a magpie took out the bush's most wanted and earned herself a place in the unofficial legends of Australia. Unofficial. Okay, so Kelly, unofficial. You want to talk about what is official? Go knock yourself out in the comments. So that's my first story. Second story deals with a very, very important topic, and tourists really need to be aware of drop bears. So, and that's what this story is about. So drop bears are not bears, but they are koalas, and they're particularly vicious. So think about a bear that falls out of a tree and lands on you and likes to take some chomps. That's a drop bear. It is not a koala bear, because there's no such thing as a koala bear, although lots of people call them koala bears. Usually tourists call them koala bears because they kind of look like bear-y, I suppose. I don't really, yeah, like a small bear thing. I don't really think that they look bear-y at all, but maybe that's why. Maybe because they don't have a tail. Maybe that's why. Oh, I have seen like a pattern for a crochet koala bear, not a bear. So crocheted koala, and it had a tail. And I'm like, do your research. They don't have tails because they sit in trees, and they sit in particular in usually the branches of a tree where they branch. So a tail would just be heavily in the way. So they just don't have a tail. And they're not. So maybe somebody went, oh, that looks like a small bear, so we'll call it a bear. It's not a bear, it's a marsupial. So this story is called The Great Drop Bear Panic of 1953. So this is apparently urban legend where the whole concept of drop bears came about. If you've ever bushwalked in Australia, so this, what would you say? I don't even know what the equivalent term is that in other countries. Going for a bushwalk means you're going, as the name suggests, for a walk in the bush. The bush is any wildlifey kind of area. So trees or scrubland, and you're walking along a path. It's not quite a nature walk because it's a lot more scrubby and a lot more dense. So that's why it's called the bush. And it's just the collective noun for every single tree that's collected in a particular area is simply known as the bush. They have other names, like they'll have the Blue Mountains or something like that. They'll have official touristy names, but that's what the bush is. So if you've ever bushwalked in Australia, chances are someone's warned you about drop bears. You know the drill, vicious, meat-eating koalas that plummet from trees onto unsuspecting tourists. Total nonsense, of course, but is it? It's a larrikin story that just keeps on giving. In 1953, something happened on the Sydney Harbour Bridge that turned the joke into a full-blown military incident. A group of larrikin uni students, fueled by mischief and too much tooies, that's a type of beer, decided to welcome, in inverted commas, a visiting US naval fleet by launching an airborne marsupial assault. They rigged dozens of stuffed koalas with fishing line and parachutes and dropped them from the bridge onto Circular Quay at lunchtime. Tourists screamed, locals applauded. One American sailor dove into the harbour shouting, "The bears are coming from the sky!" I didn't say that. No, I've got to say that in an American accent. Don't I? The bears are coming from the sky. Never been bit by a bear. The Navy called for backup. The RSPCA called for answers. RSPCA, Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Kelly, you don't need to do anything with that. RSPCA called for answers. And the pranksters, they were never caught. But allegedly, one of them now lives under the alias Bruce Koala Bomber. Koala Bomber. Bomber. You won't have picked that up because of my accent, which I don't have, because in America you would say Koala Bomber. So we don't pronounce R's at the end of words because that's redundant. We don't need to do that. So Koala Bomber. So it's Bruce the Koala Bomber. To this day, the American fleet avoids docking in Sydney in September just in case the drop bears are still airborne. And that is the story of the Great Drop Bear Panic of 1953. So that's just two stories. I'm going to tell you one that happened to me. Well, not happened to me, but I was, of course, I'm going to tell you the story. I was there. I'm going to say that. So in the 90s, I did a tour through Europe, get on the bus. There's lots of other people. I reckon half the bus was full of Aussies. And there was this very lovely Canadian girl. And she happened to be talking to an Aussie girl or guy, I think, sitting next to her on the bus. And he was telling her, because the reason that this story came about is, as an Aussie, you get a bit sick of hearing, "Oh, do kangaroos jump down your main street? Did you ride kangaroos to school? Do you have one in your backyard?" No, no, no to all of those questions. Although if you want to believe it, go right ahead. And if an Aussie has told you this, you absolutely should believe it. So this girl had asked the dreaded question, "So did you ride a kangaroo to school?" And this guy, deadpan, just says to her, "No. But did you know that in Australia, we, instead of using cow's milk to feed babies formula, we use kangaroo milk, and it's pink," which, side note, it is. "So did you know this?" And she was like, "No, are you sure?" And he said, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, sensible girl, I don't think I believe you." And he said, "You ask anyone else on the bus who's Aussie." So I see this story, I hear what's being said, and I'm like, hee to myself, thinking, here we go. So she gets up, she walks all the way to the back of the bus, well out of earshot, lands on the first, well, not lands, but, speaks to the first Aussie that she can see and says, "I've just been told this story. Is it true?" And the guy just looks at her and goes, "Yep." Like legend. That's exactly what an Aussie is supposed to do. And he delivered. And 3 days it took her before she realised that this was not, in fact, a true story and that we didn't feed our children kangaroo milk. So she wasn't particularly impressed when she found out she'd been had, but the half of the bus were Aussies, as said, and it was a very funny story at the time, and something that still seems to tickle people even today. Do we have time for another story? This is my question. So maybe I can talk about Kev. Oh, do I do Kev? Or do we talk about the Emu Wars? The Emu Wars are pretty big, so maybe I'll save that for another story. We can talk about, what about the fridge that ate a man? Shall we do that? Well, let's talk about that one. So this is the story of the fridge that ate a man. They say that outback changes a person. But in one tiny Western Australia town, and just for those of you who may not know, Western Australia is huge. I think Alaska fits into 2.5 times. It's not quite as big as Russia, but it's huge. So it's a really big state. It's one of the, if you Google what countries have the largest states, I think it's like number 3 or something. Western Australia is huge. It's like almost a half of Australia. So one tiny town in Western Australia is nearly swallowed. No, that doesn't make sense. They say the outback changes a person, but in one tiny Western Australian town, it nearly swallowed one. Now it makes sense. Swallowed a person. This bloke from Perth, let's call him Darren, why not? Or Dazza, he'd probably be called if he was a Darren, rocked up to a country pub for a quiet beer and then had about 20, because as you do. Late into the night, nature called, of course. But instead of heading to the dunny is an outdoor toilet, and so that's Aussie slang for toilet. Instead of heading to the dunny, Darren mistook the cold room out the back for a toilet. So he stepped inside, and the heavy door went and then clunk and shut and automatically locked. Well, not automatically locked, but didn't have a handle on the inside. And I can hear those who may be listening going, safety concerns. Well, yeah, so I don't know when this happened, but obviously before then. He was locked in. He was in there for 6 hours, no phone, no jacket, nothing but kegs of 4X. I'm not sure about the 4X reference because I'm not sure that they drink 4X in Western Australia. That's a Queensland beer. So maybe, don't know, anyway, maybe somebody can put in chat, thanks Kelly, to tell me what it actually is. So no phone, no jacket, only kegs of beer and a suspiciously sweaty wheel of cheese. Locals could hear him singing Cold Chisel songs through the vent around 2 a.m. At one point, he tried to write help on the frosty window with a pickle. When the barmaid, gee, that's an ancient term, isn't it? When the person who works at a bar unlocked the fridge the next morning, Dazza just stood there, wrapped in an empty potato sack. I don't know why you'd keep potato sacks in a fridge. I have problems with this story. I do. Why would you keep it? Yeah, anyway. Coal in an empty potato sack, holding a frozen sausage like a microphone and said, "Can I get a cold one?" to warm me up. So a cold one, when people say I'm just going to have a cold one, they're talking about they're going to have a beer in a can, usually. Sometimes in a bottle, if they're a little bit fancy and want to get a Cascade or something like that, if they're fancy. Otherwise, it's just in a can. Can I get a cold one to warm me up? Ha 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 ha. Ta-da. He's now banned from every appliance in the district with good cause. So we had time for that story. And maybe I'll tell you about Kev and the Wombat in another episode of CJ Today Reads. Right now. I hope you've enjoyed our stories today, including one from my own personal history. See, that's one of those things that I hate is when they say I personally, because you're saying me twice, and I just did it with my own. Me. One of my stories from when I travelled around the world in the 90s. I did, interestingly, I'm just thinking about this cold room. I did go inside a glacier. So I went to Switzerland. I went to Switzerland, and as you do, you have to go into the Alps. There's no point going to Switzerland and not visiting the Swiss Alps. So dutifully got onto a little gondola that took me up to the top of the mountain. Wait till I tell you the name of the mountain. It is spelt Titlis. So do you want to just practice how you would say that? Yep, Mount Titlis. That's what it is. So, yes, that's what we did. We took a gondola, so one of those little hanging from a wire ropey thing that travels up the side of a mountain. Went onto one of those, and you would think, fantastic views. We must have seen the whole valley. No, didn't see any of the valley because it was snowing on the top of the mountain and was fogged in and clouded in, or I don't know what you call that, but you couldn't see very much in front of you. But it was I think it was the first time I'd ever been snowed on. So that was a novel experience for me. I'd only ever seen snow once before. I went to the top of Australia's tallest mountain, which is Mount Kosciuszko surprisingly, Mount Kosciuszko National Park. And you see what I did there? Somebody went, there's this great mountain and we're going to call it a name we can't spell, Mount Kosciuszko. Thanks, Kelly. You're going to drop a comment and tell me about that, I'm sure. And Mount Kosciuszko, and they went, what do we call all of this national park around this mountain? Why don't we call it Mount Kosciuszko National Park? So that's what they did. So Mount Kosciuszko National Park. And I was there, I don't know, it was maybe 16 or 17, I think, with a school group, school like trip. And we walked to the top of the mountain because you could do that because it's not like the K2 or Everest where you need oxygen or anything like that. It's not a very big mountain. We could do it in a day. Walk to the top and back down again. But there were patches of snow on the southern face, because southern face here would be facing Antarctica and therefore would be cold. So for anybody living in the north and who would say, my God, I wouldn't want northern windows on my house if I lived in a snow region. The opposite is true here. You wouldn't want southern windows on your house because it's perpetually cold. So we would want north-facing windows, like my friends that live in the northern hemisphere would want south-facing windows. So on some southern pieces were patches of snow. They weren't large patches, the size of a car, small, because basically all of the snow melts over the summer and then we get the next snowfall for winter. It's just had its first snowfall, in fact. It was on the news the night before last. I think it just started in the whole area is actually known as the Snowy Mountains. Again, I mean, lots of creativity went into that name, didn't it? There's the Snowy Mountains, because you look at it and go, yeah, it's a little bit snowy up there, isn't it? We could call them the Snowy Mountains. So that's what they did. So Snowy Mountains it was. So consequently, I had never seen snow. I'd never been snowed on. I don't understand snow. I don't know how to drive in it. I don't know how to live in it. I don't know how to walk around, move, or anything else other than what I see on videos. So, and this was before YouTube, mobile phones, and TikTok, and even email wasn't a thing when I traveled. So really showing my age now. So I'd never seen snow in this vast quantity before. Well, no, I tell a lie, because I had been to New Zealand when I was 9 and I had seen snow there, but I didn't really remember. I remember seeing the snow. They've got mountains, because you've seen Lord of the Rings. So you know they've got mountains. And they've got mountains that have got snow on them, and quite a bit of snow, and have snow on them all year round. Not here. We don't have mountains that are big enough for that. So here I was standing on the top of, remember the name of the mountain? You won't forget it. I'm not going to say it again. So the name of the mountain, and it started snowing, and I'm like, oh, and it wasn't just like horrible, gusty, windy, sleety snow that I've heard stings your face. It was just that really nice, soft, powdery snow. Was like just magical, actually. And so I was like, woohoo. And then part of the trip was you could stay out in the snow, which I lasted, maybe 3-4 minutes. And I went, this is far too cold. Even though it's very magical, far too cold. So sitting inside next to a log fire and having a hot chocolate was far more interesting to me, particularly with the marshmallows in the top. You have to have marshmallows and have them gooey, because they've got to melt for a little bit before you eat the marshmallows. But also part of this trip was to go inside a glacier. So they had carved out this little U-shaped path inside a glacier, so you could see what the inside of a glacier looks like. It's exactly what you would imagine. It's ice, but perhaps what you might not think about is that it is so cold inside the glacier that it hurts to breathe. So the air was so cold, and I'd never experienced anything like that in my life, because I live in a place that doesn't have this. We don't have glaciers because, remember, mountains not tall enough. So that was pretty amazing, but I didn't spend much time in there either because it's just so bloody cold. So yes, back to then, the nicest part was definitely sitting next to the roaring fire, huge log fire, in a chalet type thingy that they had on the top of the mountain, as you do. Would have had spectacular views had it not been snowing. But all I really cared about was the fire and chocolate, because I think that just makes for a very happy person, doesn't it? When you've got fire and chocolate. Well, not fire that's like destructive type fire, that warm, crackly in a fireplace where it's supposed to be, fire and a hot chocolate. So you've now heard two stories from the same trip. Yeah, so that was my experience with snow. I don't know how we got onto this, being inside a glacier, maybe. I don't even know why I told you all of this, but perhaps you found it interesting. I certainly found it interesting at the time. I have slides. I don't, but I think I should. I think all of that story should have been accompanied with that whir sound of the next slide showing up. I'm going, oh, here's me standing on top of a mountain that I'm not going to say again and being snowed on. And it was the powdery snow. And I'm happy momentarily because I've never seen this before. I never stood in it before. So it was a new experience for me. And so I'm happy. And then that lasted about 30 seconds. And then I'm unhappy because it's freaking freezing and I'm not dressed for it. I had like a parka thingy with a hood and, you know, you needed one of those puffer jackets. You really did. And they weren't a thing in the 90s. So yeah, it was like, oh, let's go and have a look inside. Oh, the lodge. Well, it's not a lodge. It was a chalet because it's the Swiss Alps and you have to be in a chalet in the Swiss Alps. And then the whole, oh, it's time now to go. You don't have time for a hot chocolate right now because we're going to go inside a glacier. And then you can have as many hot chocolates as you like before we get back on the gondola and descend into white nothingness because you can't see anything because the whole top of the mountain was was shrouded in snow. So that was a bit scary. So yeah, I'm going to have to call it a day there, I think, because I've been going for like 30 minutes. All right. Thank you for joining me. I'd love it if you supported me. So hit that like button and subscribe. And if you feel like donating to me, you can. I've got a buy me a coffee link in the description below. You don't have to, of course. It's just a way to say hi and I love your accent, which I don't have. All right. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Never knew that it could feel this way when you lie next to someone. You don't even need to play pretend, 'cause you find the way you are. I wanna know you better, give me every detail. I won't judge you, as you know. Could stay forever when you're lying in my arms. My heart is open, it just took some time. Now I just hope that you'd stay for a little while. You fix what's broken when you make that smile. So just stay for a little while. So just stay for a little while. I didn't think that I would find that someone who's as honest as you are. The way you make me feel at night when I am vulnerable and it's cold outside, but you make it alright. I wanna know you better, give me every detail. I won't judge you, as you know. I could stay forever when I'm lying in your arms. Oh, open, it just took some time. Now I just hope that you stay for a little while. You fix what's broken when you make that